the desperate call. The crimson tide swept across the holographic display, consuming another star system in its relentless advance. Ambassador Keth Var watched in horror as the seventh world of the Andorian cluster winked out of existence, its billion inhabitants now nothing more than organic fuel for the growing swarm. "How many more?" whispered Council Prime Velandra, her crystalline features reflecting the dying light of distant suns. The chamber of the Zephyrian High Council had never felt so cold, despite the warm, amber glow of their bioluminescent architecture. "At current rates of expansion," Kethvar replied, his voice hollow with despair, "the Crimson Swarm will reach New Zephyr within 18 cycles, perhaps 20, if the Outer Rim colonies can delay them." The assembled council members, representatives, of a civilization spanning 3,000 years and 47 star systems, sat in stunned silence. The Zephyrians had always been explorers, artists, and philosophers. Their sleek vessels had mapped distant galaxies, their scholars had unlocked the secrets of quantum consciousness, and their terraforming techniques had brought life to barren worlds. But they had never been warriors. "The Corvin Republic?" asked Defense Coordinator Nix Rel, grasping for hope. "Withdrew behind their fortress worlds after losing their outer colonies," Kethvar answered. "The hegemony of stars has sealed their borders. The Trade Federation speaks only of acceptable losses and strategic withdrawals. We are alone." Council Prime Velandra rose from her seat, her tall, willowy form casting strange shadows in the amber light. "Then we evacuate. Gather what we can, retreat to the Rim territories, rebuild elsewhere." "There is nowhere to retreat," Kethvar said quietly. "The swarm has appeared simultaneously in 17 sectors. This isn't an invasion, it's a harvest. They're consuming the galaxy itself." A younger council member, science advisor Zix Ken, stepped forward. His scales shimmered with the nervous energy patterns typical of his subspecies. "Ambassador, in your research of the ancient archives, did you find nothing? No mention of any species that successfully resisted such a threat?" Kethvar hesitated. There was something, a classified file he had discovered deep in the Galactic Survey archives. A world that had been quarantined 3 centuries ago, its inhabitants deemed too dangerous for contact. But the implications of what he was considering. "There is one possibility," he said slowly. "But it would require us to violate the most sacred protocols of galactic civilization." The chamber fell silent. Velandra's bioluminescent patches dimmed to almost nothing. "Speak." "During the Great Survey, our explorers discovered a world in the outer spiral arm, a death world, classified as Category 9 hostile. The dominant species should have been extinct within millennia of achieving sentience, yet they not only survived, but thrived. The Survey Council ordered immediate quarantine and classified all data. Defense Coordinator Nix Rel's warrior caste markings flared red. "You speak of contacting Deathworlders? The protocols exist for a reason, Ambassador. Such species are unpredictable, violent, unstable. And perhaps," Kethvar said, meeting her gaze, "exactly what we need." The debate that followed would later be remembered as the most contentious in Zephyrian history. For 6 hours the council argued. Some demanded evacuation, others called for surrender to minimize casualties. A few suggested negotiating with the swarm itself, though no one knew if such a thing was even possible with a hive mind that viewed all other life as consumable resources. Finally, as the chamber's biolights began their evening cycle, Council Prime Velandra called for silence. "We will vote," she announced. "All in favor of maintaining quarantine protocols and pursuing conventional solutions?" 12 hands rose. "All in favor of attempting contact with the death world designated as Terra?" 13 hands rose, including Kethvar's own. "The motion carries by a single vote. May the ancestors forgive us." Dr. Victoria Kane had always been drawn to the impossible. At 35, she was the youngest xenobiologist ever appointed to head the Deep Space Communication Array, humanity's most advanced facility for detecting and analyzing extraterrestrial signals. Located in the radio quiet zone of Antarctica, The array consisted of a 100-meter dish surrounded by quantum computers, capable of processing signals from across the galaxy. Victoria had spent the last decade searching for patterns in cosmic background radiation, hoping to find evidence of intelligent life. What she discovered at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning was far more than she had ever dared imagine. Dr. Kane called her research assistant, Dr. James Wong, his voice tight with excitement. "You need to see this immediately." Victoria hurried to the main console, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air of the control room. On the screen before her, complex mathematical patterns scrolled past, too ordered to be natural, too sophisticated to be accidental. "How long has this been coming in?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "Started about an hour ago. The signal is incredibly tight beam, aimed directly at Earth. But here's the really strange part. It's not just mathematics. There are linguistic patterns embedded in the data stream, as if someone analyzed our internet transmissions and learned to communicate in multiple human languages." Victoria stared at the data, her mind racing. "Are you certain this isn't some kind of terrestrial interference? A satellite malfunction? Maybe a military test?" "I've run every diagnostic we have. This signal is originating from outside the solar system, approximately 47 light-years away." "And Victoria?" James paused, his expression serious. "They're not just trying to communicate, they're asking for help." Within 6 hours, the signal had been analyzed, decoded, and transmitted to every major government on Earth. The message was simple, desperate, and terrifying. "People of Terra, we are the Zephyrian Empire. Our civilization faces extinction from a force we cannot defeat. Ancient records speak of your world as dangerous beyond measure, your species as surviving impossible conditions. We break sacred laws to contact you. We need warriors. We need Deathworlders. Will you help us fight for the survival of all free life in this galaxy?" Colonel Marcus Reed had seen action on 3 continents and survived conflicts that would have broken lesser soldiers. At 42, he commanded the respect of military leaders worldwide and had a reputation for impossible missions. But sitting in the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, he felt completely out of his depth. "The scientific community confirms the signal's authenticity," said Secretary General Martinez, addressing the assembled world leaders. "This is genuine first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization, and they're asking for military assistance." The Russian representative leaned forward. "What exactly are they offering in return?" Dr. Kane, who had been brought in as an expert consultant, activated a holo display showing technical schematics that had been included with the message. Faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, medical technology centuries ahead of our own. The transportation alone could revolutionize human civilization. "And the risks?" asked the British Prime Minister. "Unknown," Reed admitted. "We'd be sending human forces into an alien war against an enemy we know nothing about. But the alternative might be worse." The Chinese representative studied the data. "These Crimson Swarm entities, they consume entire worlds?" "According to the Zephyrians, yes, and their expansion pattern suggests they won't stop with this galaxy." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the aliens were telling the truth, this threat could eventually reach Earth regardless of humanity's involvement. The question was whether to face it now as allies with an advanced civilization, or later, alone and unprepared. "We need volunteers," Reed said finally. "Military personnel from all nations. This can't be seen as any one country's operation." "And leadership?" asked the Secretary General. All eyes turned to a figure who had remained silent throughout the briefing. Captain Zara Okafor of the British Royal Marines had served with distinction in special operations across the globe. At 38, she had the tactical brilliance of a seasoned commander combined with the adaptability that would be crucial in an alien environment. "If we're doing this," she said, her Nigerian accent lending gravity to her words, "we do it, right? Full volunteers only. No one goes who isn't absolutely committed. Because if these Zephyrians are right about us being Deathworlders, we're about to find out just what that means." 3 weeks later, Captain Zara Okafor stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot in the viewport. Around her, 200 of humanity's finest soldiers, scientists, and specialists made their final preparations for a journey into the unknown. The Zephyrian transport ships were marvels of engineering, organic curves blended with crystalline technology, their hulls seeming to pulse with their own life. Ambassador Kethvar had met them at the rendezvous point beyond Pluto, his first sight of humans in person, confirming both his hopes and his fears. They were shorter than Zephyrians, more compact, with a density of muscle and bone that spoke of high-gravity evolution. But it was their eyes that truly unsettled him. Predator's eyes, alert and calculating, missing nothing. "Your world," he had said to Captain Okafor during their first meeting. "It shaped you into something unique in the galaxy. We can only pray that uniqueness is enough." Now, as the ships engaged their faster-than-light drives and the stars began to blur, Zara Okafor wondered if they were about to save two civilizations or doom them both. Behind her, she could hear her troops talking quietly among themselves. Marines and Rangers, SEALs and Spetsnaz, all united by the understanding that they were humanity's first ambassadors to the stars. And if the Zephyrians were right about what Earth had made them, they were about to introduce the galaxy to its first taste of true Deathworld warfare. Proving the Deathworlders' new Zephyr hung in space like a jewel carved from crystal and starlight. The planet's surface gleamed with cities that seemed grown rather than built, their spires reaching toward the heavens in organic curves that defied human understanding of architecture. Orbital platforms drifted in perfect formation around the world, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with gentle rhythms that reminded Captain Zara Okafor of a sleeping heartbeat. "Beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Commander David Park, her second-in-command, as their transport approached the main orbital station. "Hard to believe it's a fortress world." Zara studied the defensive installations through the viewport. The Zephyrian idea of military fortification was unlike anything in human experience. Flowing shields of energy that rippled like water, weapon platforms that resembled flowering plants more than gun turrets. Everything was elegant, artistic, and utterly impractical for the kind of war they were about to fight. "That's the problem," she murmured. "They've never had to choose between beauty and survival." Ambassador Kethvar approached them, his crystalline features reflecting the planet's glow. After 3 weeks in transit, the humans had grown accustomed to the Zephyrians' appearance. Tall, graceful beings with translucent skin that shifted color with their emotions. Right now, Kethvar's skin showed the deep blue-green of anxiety. "Captain Okafor," he said, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his species. "The High Command awaits your arrival. I must warn you, there is considerable debate about your methods." "Our methods?" asked Sergeant Major Isabella Torres, the expedition's senior non-commissioned officer. At 45, she had survived conflicts on 4 continents and had little patience for diplomatic niceties. "What methods? We haven't done anything yet." Kethvar's skin darkened slightly. "The preliminary reports from our observers during the journey, your training exercises, your equipment demonstrations, your enthusiasm for combat scenarios. Some of our military leaders find it disturbing." Zara exchanged glances with her team. During the 3-week journey, they had maintained their training regimen, adapting to the Zephyrian ship's layout and testing the alien equipment they'd been provided. To the humans, it was routine preparation. To their hosts, it had apparently been a glimpse into something terrifying. "Ambassador?" Zara said carefully. "If they think our training is disturbing, wait until they see us actually fight." The briefing chamber on New Zephyr's primary orbital station was a work of art. Walls that curved like breaking waves, floors that seemed to ripple with captured light, and a ceiling that displayed real-time images of star systems across the galaxy. Many of those systems now showed ominous red markers indicating Crimson Swarm infestation. General Thexmore, commander of New Zephyr's defenses, stood at the center of the room. Unlike most Zephyrians, his skin bore the darker pigmentation of the warrior caste, and his movements carried a precision that reminded Zara of professional soldiers she had known. Still, when he spoke, his voice carried the same musical quality as his civilian counterparts. "Welcome to New Zephyr, humans of Earth," he said, inclining his head in what their cultural briefings had identified as a formal greeting. "We are grateful for your willingness to aid us in these dark times." "We're here to help," Zara replied, stepping forward. "What's the tactical situation?" The question seemed to catch the Zephyrian general off guard. Behind him, other military officials exchanged glances, their skin colors shifting in patterns that Dr. Patricia Reeves, the expedition's xenoanthropologist, had learned to recognize as surprise and mild offense. "Perhaps," suggested Defense Coordinator Quinnell, "we should begin with proper introductions, cultural exchange protocols, and—" "With respect," interrupted Colonel Marcus Reed, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite his administrative role. "We don't have time for protocols. How long until the swarm reaches this system?" General Thexmore's skin flickered through several colors before settling on a resigned orange. 8 cycles. Perhaps 10 if our outer defenses hold longer than expected. 8 days, translated Sergeant Major Torres grimly. "And you have how many ships?" "The New Zephyr defense fleet consists of 47 vessels, including support craft," the general replied. "Each is equipped with our most advanced shielding and energy projection systems." Lieutenant Commander Park pulled up a holographic display showing the fleet composition. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful, organic curves blended with crystalline structures, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. They were also completely unsuited for the kind of war they were about to fight. "Your ships," observed Major Catherine Wells, the expedition's tactical analyst, "they're designed for exploration and defense, not assault." "We are not an aggressive species," General Thexmore said with obvious pride. "Our vessels are built to protect, to explore, to preserve life." "And the Crimson Swarm?" asked Zara. The room's atmosphere changed immediately. Every Zephyrian present seemed to dim, their bioluminescent patterns fading to barely visible glows. General Thexmore activated a new display showing grainy footage from previous encounters. The swarm ships were nightmares of biological engineering, twisted amalgamations of organic tissue and metallic components that moved through space like predatory fish. They attacked in vast formations, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers while their larger vessels consumed everything in their path. "They are the antithesis of everything we value," the general said quietly. "They consume entire ecosystems, converting all organic and mineral matter into more of themselves. Planets, populations, entire civilizations, all become part of the swarm." "Hive mind?" asked Dr. Reeves. "Yes. Perfect coordination, no individual thought, no negotiation possible. They see all other life as resources to be harvested." Zara studied the tactical data, her mind already working through possibilities. "What's been your standard defensive strategy?" "Layered energy barriers, coordinated fleet movements following optimal formation protocols, and retreat to secondary positions when breakthrough occurs," replied Defense Coordinator Quinnell. "And how's that working out?" asked Sergeant Major Torres dryly. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. The human team spent the next 2 days observing Zephyrian military operations, and what they saw both impressed and appalled them. The aliens possessed technology that seemed like magic, energy shields that could deflect asteroids, weapons that could crack moons, sensors that could detect thoughts across star systems. But their tactical doctrine was rigid, their responses predictable, and their entire military philosophy was defensive. "They fight like they're trying to preserve a museum piece," Major Wells explained to Zara as they reviewed training footage. "Every movement follows established protocols. They never improvise, never adapt to changing conditions." "And the swarm?" "Pure aggression. They adapt constantly, probe for weaknesses, exploit any advantage. It's like watching chess masters fight against wolves." The cultural divide became apparent during the first joint training exercise. Zara had suggested a simple scenario, defending a supply convoy against hostile raiders. The Zephyrian ships formed a perfect protective formation around the convoy, their movements synchronized to the microsecond. Then the human raiders, piloting borrowed Zephyrian fighters, attacked. Within minutes, The elegant formation was in chaos. The humans didn't follow expected attack patterns. They came from impossible angles, used the convoy ships as cover, feinted toward one target before striking another. When the Zephyrian defenders tried to maintain formation, the humans exploited the gaps. When they broke formation to respond, the humans struck at the weakest points. "Cease exercise," came General Thexmore's voice over the communication system, his tone strained. "Return to base immediately." In the debriefing room afterward, the Zephyrian military leadership looked distinctly uncomfortable. Their skin patterns had shifted to colors that Dr. Reeves identified as confusion mixed with fear. "Your tactics," began Defense Coordinator Quinnell hesitantly. "They are unpredictable." "That's the point," replied Lieutenant Commander Park. "Predictability gets you killed." "But the protocols exist for a reason," protested a junior Zephyrian officer. "Coordinated movement, established patterns, orderly deployment. These ensure minimal casualties and maximum efficiency." "Against opponents who follow the same rules," Zara said gently. "The swarm doesn't play by your rules." General Thexmore leaned forward, his skin cycling through several colors before settling on a determined purple. "Show us," he said simply. "Show us how Deathworlders fight." The demonstration took place in New Zephyr's largest combat simulator, a vast chamber that could create holographic battlefields indistinguishable from reality. Zara selected 20 of her best people, a mix of different specialties and nationalities that represented the diversity of human military thinking. The scenario was simple: defend a Zephyrian colony world against an incoming swarm assault. The humans would use Zephyrian technology and ships, but were free to employ any tactics they chose. What followed challenged every assumption the Zephyrians had about warfare. The human fleet didn't form defensive formations. Instead, they scattered across the system in seemingly random patterns, using asteroids and debris fields for cover. When the swarm ships arrived expecting to face orderly defensive lines, they found chaos instead. Human pilots ambushed swarm formations from behind asteroids, then fled before retaliation could arrive. They used damaged ships as decoys, while intact vessels struck from unexpected angles. When conventional weapons proved insufficient, they improvised, ramming damaged human ships into swarm vessels, using debris as weapons, even detonating their own power cores to create massive explosions. "They're destroying their own ships," observed one horrified Zephyrian observer. "Tactical sacrifice," explained Dr. Reeves. "They're trading material assets for strategic advantage." The simulation continued for 3 hours. When it ended, the human fleet had suffered 70% casualties, losses that would have been catastrophic by Zephyrian standards. But the swarm assault had been completely destroyed, their perfect coordination shattered by unpredictable human tactics. The briefing room was silent as the final statistics appeared on the displays. General Thexmore stared at the data, his skin cycling through colors none of the humans had seen before. "You won," he said finally. 70% casualties, and you consider it a victory." "We survived," Zara corrected. "The colony survived. In war, that's what victory looks like. But the cost is acceptable if the alternative is extinction," finished Colonel Reed. "That's what you don't understand. You're fighting for an ideal of how war should be conducted. We're fighting to survive." 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the swarm's advance fleet entering the outer system. 12 massive bioships, accompanied by hundreds of smaller vessels, moving in the perfect coordination that had overwhelmed every previous Zephyrian defense. In the command center of New Zephyr's primary orbital station, General Thexmore stood beside Captain Okafor, watching the tactical displays update in real time. The joint human-Zephyrian fleet was deployed throughout the system, not in the elegant formations the Zephyrians preferred, but in the chaotic, unpredictable patterns the humans had taught them. "Are you certain this will work?" the general asked, his skin showing the pale blue of anxiety. "No," Zara replied honestly, "but it's our best chance." The swarm fleet approached the inner system, their bioships pulsing with organic energy, as they prepared to deploy their harvest drones. They had done this countless times before, overwhelmed the defenders with superior numbers, then begin the systematic consumption of another world. But something was different this time. The defensive fleet wasn't where it should be. Instead of orderly battle lines, they found scattered groups of ships moving in patterns that defied analysis. When they moved to engage one group, others would appear from unexpected angles. When they concentrated their forces, the defenders would scatter, only to regroup elsewhere. For the first time in the swarm's expansion across the galaxy, their perfect coordination began to falter. The hive mind that had consumed countless worlds couldn't adapt to opponents who refused to follow predictable patterns. All ships, Zara's voice came across the communications network. Initiate Hunter Protocol. Across the system, human and Zephyrian crews began the most audacious military operation in galactic history. Using tactics that combined human unpredictability with Zephyrian technology, they struck at the swarm fleet like a pack of wolves bringing down a larger predator. The battle for New Zephyr had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders went to war.